And we are recording. Okay, hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the Los Angeles Divorce Realtor TV channel show. This is David Hitt, and I'm here today with Neil Palache of the Wealth Creator Company. Welcome, Neil.
David, hello, how are you? Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. So Neil, can you give us an introduction as to who you are and what you do?
Right, well, thank you, David. Thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate it. Lots of fun. Good to be here with you. And so essentially, after being a financial advisor for 25 years, I decided to become a money coach and consultant. So for the last 10 years, I've worked specifically with divorced and widowed women, mostly in divorce scenarios. And the goal is to essentially get them back on their feet financially when they've gone through a divorce. So, they come to see me before, during, after, and the goal there is to provide them with the necessary tools so that they can successfully, financially move forward. And make sure that they don't have any, any issues. Because I know you've been through this with clients. It's not a fun time. Not a fun time to go through a divorce, and certainly not a fun time getting back on your feet, right?
Yeah. So I thought, as we were talking a little bit ago, maybe we'll do a series of 3 videos. This first one will be about when someone's contemplating a divorce. Why would a female contact you, and what does that conversation look like, and what are the things that they need to be aware of?
Well, the number one issue always is, can I survive? Right? I mean, to put it bluntly, they don't want to become a bag lady, and not that ever happens, or maybe it does, but they don't want to be in that position, and they've not always been heavily involved or involved at all with the finances. It just depends on their role, and so if they've not been terribly involved, or even if they have been involved, they're looking for advice, and women look for advice usually more often than men do. You know how that is. So it's something that when they come to me prior to divorce, they're saying, okay, we've sometimes like a woman came to me I'll give you a great example. She came to me last week, and her husband and she have already pretty much decided they're going to get divorced. So she's even a little bit, but they haven't filed, but this is the direction that they're going in. And she had spoken to an attorney, and that attorney had said, well, look, why don't you talk to Neil first about the finances and so on and so forth. So, we spent about an hour on the phone, and we talked about the different pieces of the estate. And you say, well, look, in California, which is where we are and where she is, you're going to get half and he's going to get half. So that's pretty much straightforward. And then in this situation, she actually made quite a bit more money than he did. So, well, you're going to probably pay a little spousal support. One kid was 18, one kid was 22. I said, okay, well, you don't have any child support issues, so that's good. Although, maybe you guys will make an agreement on what you want to do about college. That's not part of child support, but you may want to talk about that and decide how you're going to handle it. And so then she said, well, okay, let me tell you, what's going on and what we have and so forth. So she tells me, okay, there's a house, there's a 401k plan, there's a pension, there's a little bit of money in the bank, there's a few cars and so on and so forth. I mean, they've got a decent net worth. That, they're not like rich and famous or anything, but, they're worth a few bucks. And so there's a bit on the table, and she wants to make sure that it's fair, but she wants to make sure that it's fair. There's fair and there's equal. They're not always the same. And so, she was not aware, and I think that people, they would know this if they think about it for a few minutes, but when you're going through a divorce, your head's spinning, right? You're not necessarily thinking entirely clearly. So, okay, we split it 50-50. Well, and I said, well, look, and understand that you're splitting the whole, right? You're not necessarily, you're not going to get half a car, half a dog, half a house, half a 401k plan, right? I said, you don't necessarily have to split each and every asset in half, and you split the Red Sea, as it were. It could be that you get the pension plan and he gets the house, or you get the house and he gets the 401k, or however you guys to do it. But so we added it all up, and I said, okay, you've got, I don't know what, I don't remember the number. I said, but let's say the number was $1 million. There's $1 million on the table. I said, so however you split it up, however you decide to split it up, you're each supposed to end up with 500 grand, right? So if you decide you want to keep the house, and that's worth 400 of equity in there, and then there's the 401k, and so he and that's 700,000 or 600,000, so he owes you 100,000 of that, and you figure it out. I said the other thing is you've got to think about tax issues, right? Like the 401k and pension money is going to be taxed differently than the house. If you sell the house as a married couple, you get $500,000 of exemption if you do that while you're married. If you're going to do it when you're single, you're going to get a 250 exemption. So if there's profit above that, there's going to be tax there. And for him to get the 401k money out, or for you, either one of you, there's going to be tax. And if you take some of the money out right at the divorce, then the government's going to waive the 10% penalty. But if you wait till down the road, you're going to have the tax percent penalty. So there's all these things that, take into consideration. And it was a very, very interesting and eye-opening discussion for her, because there were lots of issues that she hadn't thought about. And I'm always very careful to make sure that she understands that I'm not a lawyer. And so I'm telling you what the financial issues are. And there may be some legal issues here that I'm not aware of. And so you want to make sure that even if you're mediating, because she was talking about mediating, that maybe you want to have a consultative attorney on the side as well to look at any agreement that the mediator may come up with. And because the mediator is not going to give you specific advice, they're just going to tell you how everything works, and you and your husband will come to a decision on how it works. So we had a good discussion. Part of it was to do with what you do with the real estate, because people, you've got the title. I know I'm talking to the choir with you, but you've got the title and you've got the mortgage, and they're not always the same people, right?
Correct.
You've seen that. Somebody's on the title, they're both on the mortgage, or they're both on the title, but only one is on the mortgage.
Right.
And in this case, they were both on both. And I said, well, then, you got to refi him off. Like, you can't just call the bank and say, can you take his name off? Then they're not going to do it. Stuff like that. So it was a very good conversation. And sometimes, and I said this to her, I said, there's a possibility that at the end of the day, even though she had a good income, with what you have to pay in spousal support and where you live and how you live, maybe you will need to sell the house. It's not necessarily what you want to do, but you may need to, in order to not be house poor, and make sure that you can live at a comfortable cost of living. So that's a difficult conversation, but that was what we did. That's kind of the pre-divorce discussion about what might come down the road. And she also didn't know, for instance, that the spousal support that she'd have to pay was now not deductible, because it used to be, right?
Oh, because that's the new law.
That changed,
I believe in the last year or so.
Right, and she just, that was a simple thing to say, and then she understood it, no big deal. But she, because up until a couple of years ago, it was deductible, the recipient would pay tax on it. Now you don't get a deduction, and you don't get to pay tax on it either. So no, a different situation, but that made a difference too with her, what her after-tax net income would look like, right? So that was important for her to know. But
So
that, David, that pretty much covers it, yeah.
What about, so I think we've got some good time. Why don't we go into, what about during divorce? When you know, someone contacts you, what does that conversation look like with regards to the money?
Right. Well, often my role during a divorce, because they're now kind of into the discussion with their, either with their spouse and a mediator or with their respective attorneys, right? Often I get brought in because there's budgeting requirements. Like they're starting to fill out the forms, right? You got the FL 150 and so forth. And part of that.
And that's the divorce forms?
Yeah,
file?
the divorce forms, right? So now they filed and they're in the middle of it, right? We're talking about during the process. And they've got forms to fill out. And those forms are essentially, well, some of the forms include what are your assets and liabilities and what are your income and expenses, right?
Yeah.
And those all have to be filled out in detail. And they have to be accurate, because you don't want to end up being accused of having left something off, even if it was an accident, or left something off purposefully. And unfortunately, believe it or not, people don't always tell the truth.
Yeah.
You know,
we need full disclosure.
Yeah, you got to have full disclosure. So, you know, from that perspective with my client, they're talking about, well, what is the spousal support going to look like, whether you're the recipient or you're the payer? And so a budget needs to be done. And, you know, what is your house payment, your utilities, your insurances, and all that kind of stuff. So often I'm not being brought in at that point because they're necessarily looking for financial advice, although sometimes they still are. But in many cases, it's because information is required. It needs to be in the right format, and it needs to be accurate. So we're getting involved in the assets, the liabilities, the income, and the expenses. And that's typically where I'm brought in that situation. Or occasionally somebody will kind of come to me and say, hey, I kind of need a second opinion here. I want you to look at, not from a legal perspective, but from a financial perspective, this is what's being proposed. Right. Right. What do you think? Like, can I really live on this? Is this, I try to stay away from, is this fair? Because I often don't have enough information to really get into that discussion. But I'm more for them, for their peace of mind. Can I live on this? Can I still stay in the house, or can I move? Sometimes they're moving down the road or whatever it is. And will I be okay? I mean, that to me is the biggest question. This is what's being proposed. Will I be okay?
Right. Wow. Okay. And so does your consultations with your client end up being a one-time thing, or sometimes an ongoing thing, or just depends on the scenario? Yeah,
it depends. I mean, typically they're working with me on an ongoing basis, or they're not ready. Like, it's one or the other. It's pretty black and white. I mean, I always give everybody a complimentary consult. So, you know, they're going to get a good hour from me, and they're going to get some good information. I'm not just kind of giving them generalizations. If they have some specifics for me, I'm happy to give them specific answers that are my opinion of a situation, even in the free consultation. Then they're going to hire me. I typically get hired for 3 months at a time. I charge a flat fee for that, so they know this is what it's going to cost me for Neil. I don't have to worry about picking up the phone. The clock's not ticking. Like, I paid it. They can pay monthly installments, or they can pay up front and get a discount, whatever works. But 3 months at a time. And if they're going into the post-divorce phase, you know, they know, okay, this is what I'm receiving or paying. in income and or assets. And okay, but I don't know. I've never run a household myself. We've always either done it in partnership or he did it in many cases with my clients. So I'm now going to do this myself. And depending on what their needs are, I could be teaching them online banking if it's real basic, or I could be teaching them how to do a better job managing their personal income and their personal spending. Because I have a number of clients who make really healthy six-figure incomes and they're still broke. They make a lot of money, but they're like, they run out of money before they run out of month, and they're frustrated.
Right.
And so
they're maybe overspending.
Yeah, they're
or not living within their budget.
Yeah, they've got stuff they don't need. Like, you look at simple, sometimes it's a mortgage. Like you say, okay, you're at 4% and rates are at 3%. So like, go get a refi. That's an easy one. But sometimes it's like you're spending $300 a month watching television. Like, how much television can you watch? Like your bill could be $110. And so, and they don't bother because it's been that way for years and nobody ever looked at it. And so, they got the football package and the basketball package and Netflix and blah, 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 and all. And, they could watch TV 24 hours a day and they got 30 minutes. So like they need to cut back. So it's not a difficult thing to find that money for them, but it's turning that around from being red to black and making life easier, having money left at the end of the month. Oh my goodness, I still have money in my checking account. Cool. So that's a lot of what I'm doing in the post-divorce.
Awesome. And so it sounds really to me like you're really like a guide for the person in the marriage that most likely probably didn't handle the finances or paying of bills and so forth, and you're really kind of teaching them on how to do that and how to do that for themselves and plan for the immediate, the near future, and the far maybe further away with respect to finances and what that plan most likely should be overall, depending on what their goals are. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, and I'd say about half the time they've not been that heavy into the finances. Half the time they've been handling it or at least involved, but maybe not doing a great job because they're busy professional women, they run businesses, whatever it is. And so the personal finances kind of take a back seat, which often happens, and debt has been accumulating because it just does. And so, it's not that they don't know how to make money or that they're not fantastic at what they do, but they've just got too much on their plate. And they may also be still raising kids. They're a mom, they're a homemaker, they're a businesswoman, a professional woman. And so it's just life is busy and they want to make sure they don't make any big mistakes.
Right.
And so I'm kind of there as a sounding board.
So you're the important advisor, trusted advisor at this point, if you will, and at this time in their lives. So that's so awesome. And I thank you, Neil, for being on the call and doing this interview, if you will. As I mentioned to you, this will be posted on our divorce real estate blog, and it's really to educate anyone who may be thinking about or contemplating a divorce and the different aspects of the things that they need to be aware of, or the types of people that they need to, maybe if they need help in a certain area. And I love that you are the founder of the Divorce Transition Professionals Group, which brought us together, and that because of your early foresight of what you wanted to create with your organization, now you have been successful for 3 years plus, making divorce a little bit easier for everyone. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Isn't
Thank
that
you.
correct?
Nice plug, David.
Yeah. So
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's such a high conversation and intention that the group is serving and purpose. And so it's an honor and a privilege to be a part of it and to know you. And thank you for this today. I really appreciate that. And we'll have to do more of these. I'm going to shut the video down now.
Thank you, David. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.